Grand Rising everyone, this is Adamara with my channel Eyes Wide Shut. Don't forget to check out my other channel which is called Spiritual Echelons. This is my side channel. On this channel I'll talk about spirituality, natural medicines, yoga, acupuncture and all of that kind of thing. Now this channel is still in progress, so there aren't that many videos on that channel at the moment. Today I want to talk to you about a philosophical story. Now, this is entitled The Wise Man's Knowledge. The Wise Man's Knowledge. There's a guy and his name was Idris. And he had some adversaries in his neighborhood. People who did not like him. There was a particular gang that did not like him. Why? Because they thought Idris was one of these guys who kept himself to himself, who didn't bother with anybody. He was happy in his own company. And so they didn't like this. They thought that he was a snob because he didn't want to mix with anyone. Now, one day, Idris comes home and they're waiting outside of his house. And as Idris goes into his house, they pick up some stones and they throw it at Idris's windows, smashing his front windows on the ground floor. Now, Idris did not respond. He did not come out of his house. So they was wondering, why has he not come out? Why has he not responded? So they picked up some more stones and they threw it at his upper window, breaking his upper window, smashing his upper window. Still, there was no response from Idris. He just stayed in his house. The day after, they saw Idris and he was fixing his windows and he never paid them any mind, no attention whatsoever. So just thinking, what's wrong with this guy? Why doesn't he ever seem to respond? Why doesn't he ever seem to react? Anyway, so one night they decide to steal Idris's car. So four of them broke into Idris's car and then drove it up to some wrecks. And you know what they done? They set light to his car. Now Idris knew it was them that set fire to his car, and you know what? When he saw them, he did not respond to them. He did not react in any way. And so this made the guys even more angry, made them really wound up. It really riled them. So when they saw Idris again, they started to call him names. They started to call him racist names. And you know what? Idris still didn't respond. He just carried on about his business, didn't pay them any mind whatsoever. One week, Idris went away with his family abroad. And you know what the four guys done? They broke into his house and they stole everything out of his house. They took out his furniture, his TV, his jewelry, and trashed his house. When Idris came back off holiday, and he seen the state of his house. And he knew exactly who had broken into his house. The four guys. These four jealous guys. These four angry, jealous guys. Idris didn't respond. He started to put his house back together. Then one day, he's walking up the road. And on the other side of the road. And one calls over to him. You know what? I had an affair with your wife about 2 years ago. So what do you think about that, Idris? Which happened to be a true story as well. Idris actually knew about this. He just carried on about his business. And these guys really started to get really wound up now. Why isn't this guy ever responding? Why doesn't he ever come back or retaliate to say anything? Idris was a cool, calm, collective character. A cool, calm, collective character. He just let things just wash over his head. One morning, Idris is standing on a bus stop and one of his adversaries was in front of him and he got onto the bus. But guess what? This guy didn't have any money. He forgot his wallet. So Idris was stood behind him and tapped the guy on the shoulder. He didn't say nothing to the guy. He just handed him £5 and the guy paid the bus driver for the journey. You know what? The funny thing is, the guy didn't even say thank you. He did not acknowledge Idris, but Idris didn't let this get to him. He didn't let it get to him. The guy didn't even have the manners to say thank you, and manners cost nothing, as we all know. Then there's another time. Idris is standing in a queue in a shop, and these guys come in to the shop and push past him and went straight to the front of the queue. And Idris didn't respond. Again, these guys were quite angry, thinking, hang on a minute, we just passed this guy, he stood in the queue, and didn't even respond and said nothing whatsoever. And this really wound them up. So every time there was an action by these guys, they were expecting a reaction back from Idris, and Idris just calmly just went about his business. Cool, calm, and collective. So anyway, there's another day. Idris is walking up the road, and these guys are walking up the road on the same side. And Idris is thinking, should I cross the road or not? I think these guys want to start some trouble. So he said like to himself, you know what? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just going to let's start the road and just see what happens. Knowing that he might get beaten up by these guys. Anyway, as he's approaching these guys, one steps off the curb. The one that stepped off the curb was the one that was on the bus previously. And as the guys were walking past the other three, one of them nudged Idris, expecting a reaction. Idris didn't respond. He just carried on. So when he got about 20 yards down the road, they turned around and they called out to him. And they called him back. So he walks back to them. And they said to him, tell me something. Why is it every time we do something, you don't respond, you don't react, you don't retaliate in any way? And he said, well, why do you think that is? So the guys turned around and said, we asking you the question, why is it that you never seem to respond or retaliate every time we do something to you? So Idris turned around and he says, how do you feel when I don't respond? So the guys said, quite angry. We get quite wound up. And every time you don't respond, we get even more wound up and we get more angry. So Idris says, why is that? They said, because you don't seem to respond. You don't react. So Idris turns around and he says, you know what? One day we're all going to end up in this exactly the same place. It doesn't matter if you're a rich man. It doesn't matter if you're a poor man. It doesn't matter about your reactions, your emotions. We all end up in the same place. So the guys, so what do you mean? We all end up in the same place. He said, think about it. No matter if you're rich, poor, no matter how angry, how upset, how emotional you get about things, we all end up in the same place. So they say again, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, at the end of life, don't we all end up in the same place? Don't we all end up in the dirt? Don't we all end up being in the soil? So the guys turn around and they say to him, you know what? I never really thought about that. But what's the point that you're making? I just said, with all of the things, the traumas, the tribulations, the anger, the hate, the racism, with all of that, at the end of life, when you go into the ground, and we all end up there, do all these things we fight about, and all these possessions, does it matter? So the guys looked at Idris and said, like, you know what? No, it doesn't seem to matter. Idris, to remain, says, life is hard, and there's a lot of trials and tribulations that we have to go through. But I try my hardest to just live my life the best that I can, and try not to let things upset me. Because at the end of the day, is it all worth it? I hope you get the moral of or just a story. Just live your life to the best you can, and don't worry and focus on what other people are doing. This video was entitled The Wise Man's Knowledge, and if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe and share my video. Thank you. Eldad Amara.